Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum, dear students. Welcome to Virtual University. I am your course instructor for the course of Training and Development, and this is the 22nd time that we are meeting for this course. The topic that we are going to discuss today is Training Evaluation. आपको याद होगा हमने इनिशियल सेशंस में एक प्रोसेस डिस्कस किया था, ट्रेनिंग डिजाइन प्रोसेस. ट्रेनिंग डिजाइन प्रोसेस के स्टेप्स ये थे कि हमने शुरू करना है नीड्स असेसमेंट से, देखना है कि एक ट्रेनिंग कंपनी की स्ट्रेटेजिक ऑब्जेक्टिव्स के साथ मैच करती है, और पर्सन टास्क एनालिसिस करने के बाद हमने डिसाइड करना है कि किन लोगों को ट्रेनिंग करवाने की ज़रूरत है और किस चीज़ में ट्रेनिंग देने की ज़रूरत है. उसके बाद हमने उन ट्रेनीज के एटीट्यूड्स और बेसिक स्किल्स को एनालाइज करना है. फिर हमने नेक्स्ट स्टेप में ये डिस्कस किया कि हमने उनके लिए एक लर्निंग एनवायरनमेंट क्रिएट करना है, यानी हमने उनके ट्रेनिंग ऑब्जेक्टिव्स को डिफाइन करना है, हमने उनके प्रोग्राम को डिज़ाइन करना है, हमने उनके लिए एक अच्छा ट्रेनिंग एनवायरनमेंट डेवलप करना है, ट्रेनिंग सेटिंग डेवलप करनी है, और हमने ये डिस्कस किया कि आप उन ट्रेनीज को किस तरह से बेहतर तरीके से इन्वॉल्व कर सकते हैं. उसके बाद नेक्स्ट स्टेप उस डिज़ाइन प्रोसेस में ये है कि हमने ये डिटरमिन करना है कि ट्रेनिंग ट्रांसफ़र कैसे होगी, वर्क एनवायरनमेंट में ट्रेनिंग कैसे ट्रांसफ़र की जा सकती है, उसके पीछे क्या थ्योरीज हैं, उसके पीछे क्या नॉलेज है हमारे पास, और हम उस नॉलेज को किस तरह से अप्लाई कर सकते हैं. अब नेक्स्ट स्टेप जो है, ये हमने सारा स्टेप्स जो हैं इनको कवर कर लिया. जो ट्रेनिंग डिज़ाइन प्रोसेस है, हमारा कोर्स भी उसी तरह से डिज़ाइन हुआ है. हमने उन स्टेप्स को स्टेप वाइज उसी सीक्वेंस में डिस्कस किया है. सो द नेक्स्ट स्टेप इन दिस प्रोसेस इज ट्रेनिंग इवैल्यूएशन. ट्रेनिंग इवैल्यूएशन is conducted to analyze or assess the training effectiveness. Training effectiveness, which means the benefits that the company and the trainees receive from training. Now, when we have to measure the effectiveness, when we have to analyze the effectiveness, हमने ये देखना है कि जो ट्रेनिंग करवाई गई, जो उसके ऑब्जेक्टिव्स हमने डिज़ाइन किए, उन ऑब्जेक्टिव्स को मीट किया गया है कि नहीं किया गया, लर्निंग गोल्स को अचीव किया गया है या नहीं किया गया, और उस लर्निंग के थ्रू कंपनी को क्या फायदा हुआ, ऑर्गेनाइजेशन को क्या फायदा हुआ. सो हमने इफेक्टिवनेस को एनालाइज करना है इन टर्म्स ऑफ whether the training has been effective in learning and whether the training has been effective in giving some benefits to the company. So when we have to analyze that, we need to analyze it through some measurable outcomes. So training effectiveness is analyzed through training outcomes or criteria, which are measures that the trainer and the company use to evaluate the training programs. So we need to develop some kind of measures. We need to develop some kind of criteria, that this is the criteria that we are going to use to analyze the effectiveness of this training. For example, आपके पास फेल होने का क्राइटेरिया क्या है? 50% मार्क्स लेंगे तो पास हो जाएंगे, 60% लेंगे तो सी ग्रेड मिलेगा, उससे ज्यादा बी मिलेगा, 80 पे ए मिलेगा, और some variation of that. So this is the criteria that shows that how effectively you have learned a course, how effectively you have learned the material or the learning that was provided in a particular course. So similarly, training has to be measured through some kind of outcomes. वो आउटकम्स क्या हैं, वो हम थोड़ी देर बाद इसी सेशन में डिस्कस करेंगे. सो वी नीड टू मेजर द ट्रेनिंग इफेक्टिवनेस, which needs to be measured through training outcomes, for which we need to carry out training evaluation, which is the process of collecting these outcomes, collecting information about these outcomes. So the process of collecting these outcomes has to follow an evaluation design. You have to determine that how are you going to collect these outcomes? What is the process that you are going to follow? So for that, you need to design an evaluation design. Evaluation design is the collection of information, including whom, what, when, and how, for determining the effectiveness of the training program. So, whom? Who is going to give response about the effectiveness of training? आप ट्रेनी से पूछेंगे, या आप ट्रेनर से पूछेंगे, या आप इमीडिएट सुपरवाइजर से पूछेंगे, या आप कस्टमर से पूछेंगे? किससे आप ये इंफॉर्मेशन लेंगे कि ये ट्रेनिंग जो करवाई गई है उसकी इफेक्टिवनेस सामने आई है या नहीं? सो whom? Then when are you going to carry out this evaluation? Whether you are going to carry out right after the training has ended, or you are going to carry it out after the training has ended and then after again 2 or 3 months, or you need to carry out an evaluation before the training has started and then again after it has started so that you can measure the difference. And so when you need to carry out the evaluation, and then how are you going to carry out the evaluation? Whether you are going to conduct an interview, whether you are going to ask them to fill up an exam paper, whether you are going to ask them to fill up a questionnaire, how are you going to measure the outcomes? And what are you going to measure? What will you analyze? Will you analyze behavior? Will you analyze cognitive learning? Will you analyze reactions? What will you analyze? So all these are the components of the evaluation design which need to be designed first of all before the evaluation can take place. So you need to design the evaluation design for evaluating the training effectiveness. We need to measure the training effectiveness, for which we need to specify training outcomes, for which we need to carry out training evaluation, for which we need to make an evaluation design. Now, why would we need to carry out a training evaluation? Why do we need to measure? Why do we need to see whether training has been effective or not? The reasons are very obvious and they are very logical. One of the reasons is that companies, they make a lot of investment in training and development, and they see it as something that serves their strategic goals. So they need to see that whatever has happened in the training, it should be measurable. That is very simple, that the companies, they are investing so much of money in this program, in this activity, उनको ये पता होना चाहिए, उनको ये measurable outcomes में नजर आना चाहिए कि इसका क्या फायदा हुआ है. अगर उनको ये नहीं नजर आएगा, अगर उनको measurable outcomes नहीं नजर आएंगी जो कि लिंक की जा सकती हूँ बिजनेस स्ट्रैटेजी के साथ, तो वो उसकी यूजफुलनेस को डिटर्मिन नहीं कर सकेंगे. दैट इज द इकोनॉमिक वैल्यू ऑफ दिस फंक्शन, ऑफ दिस प्रोसेस दैट दे नीड टू सी. फिर एक बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट वजह ट्रेनिंग इवैल्यूएशन कंडक्ट करने के लिए ये भी है कि ट्रेनिंग डिपार्टमेंट और ट्रेनिंग प्रोफेशनल्स के लिए ये बहुत ज़रूरी है कि वो ये दिखा सकें कि वो जो काम कर रहे हैं, वो जो कंट्रीब्यूट कर रहे हैं, वो जो सप्लाई कर रहे हैं, उसका क्या फ़ायदा है. ये बात हमने एक सेशन में शायद पहले भी की है कि अगर आप खुद एक ट्रेनर हैं एंड यू नीड टू सेल योर प्रोडक्ट, अगर आपकी एक ट्रेनिंग कंसल्टेंसी है और आपने अपने प्रोडक्ट को मार्केट करना है, उसके लिए क्या तरीका है उस प्रोडक्ट को मार्केट करने का? वो उसकी परफॉर्मेंस है. और परफॉर्मेंस यही है कि किसी भी तरह की ट्रेनिंग कंपनी को क्या फ़ायदा दे सकती है, उसके क्या रिजल्ट्स हैं, उससे लोग किस कदर सेटिस्फाइड हैं, वो कितना इसको किसी और को रिकमेंड करेंगे, और इसके ऑर्गेनाइजेशनल बेनिफिट्स क्या क्या हो सकते हैं. तो ट्रेनिंग प्रोफेशन के सर्वाइवल के लिए ये बहुत ज़रूरी है, ये बहुत इम्पॉर्टेंट है कि आप ये दिखा सकें कि आप जो ट्रेनिंग करवा रहे हैं उसकी क्या इफेक्टिवनेस है, उसका क्या फ़ायदा है. अब जब हम ट्रेनिंग इवैल्यूएशन करते हैं तो ट्रेनिंग इवैल्यूएशन के क्या क्या ऑब्जेक्टिव हो सकते हैं. What objectives does a training evaluation satisfies? The first objective of training evaluation is to identify the program's strengths and weaknesses. Very simple. You need to analyze what have been the strengths and what have been the weaknesses in that training program. These may pertain to whether the training program was able to meet the learning objectives, the way the training environment was designed and carried out, was it facilitating to the learning activity, and has the training, has it been transferred to the work environment. So what have been the strengths of the training design in achieving the learning objectives? What have been the strengths of the learning environment in facilitating the learning? And what have been the strengths of the training design in ensuring transfer of training? And vice versa, what have been the weaknesses कि ऐसा नहीं हो सका, learning objectives नहीं achieve हो सके, training work life में transfer नहीं हो सकी, weaknesses क्या रहेगी. So that is the first objective, to identify the strengths and weaknesses. Then the next objective is to assess whether content, organization, and administration of the program contribute to learning and the use of training content on the job. So the second objective is that whether the training content, the way the training material was organized, the way the training content was presented, and the administration and organization, for example, the sequence the training followed, the administration of the training program, did it facilitate the learning? Were the learners satisfied with the administration and organization of the program? Or was it too haphazard for them? Was it too unorganized for them? For example, evaluation आप करते हैं तो आपको ये पता लगता है कि ट्रेनर्स इस बात से ही सेटिस्फाइड नहीं है कि उनके पास इंफॉर्मेशन नहीं थी. उनको यही नहीं पता था कि उन्होंने कहाँ पहुंचना है, किस टाइम पे पहुंचना है और किस तरह से वो वहां पे पहुंच सकते हैं. तो यही इंफॉर्मेशन आपने, ये एक एडमिनिस्ट्रेटिव इशू है, बहुत सिंपल, इसमें कोई इंटेलेक्चुअल स्किल्स नहीं रिक्वायर्ड, लेकिन इस तरह के छोटे छोटे इश्यूज की वजह से ऑब्स्टिकल्स क्रिएट होते हैं, ट्रेनीज फ्रस्ट्रेट होते हैं, उनको प्रॉब्लम होती है. तो एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन और ऑर्गेनाइजेशन में कौन से ऐसे इश्यूज आए जिसकी वजह से आपकी ट्रेनिंग सक्सेसफुल हुई या नहीं हुई. देन अनदर ऑब्जेक्टिव इज टू आइडेंटिफाई which trainees benefited most or least from the program. So you need to identify, आप ये देखना चाहेंगे कि वो कौन से ट्रेनीज हैं, वो कौन से लोग हैं जिनको इस ट्रेनिंग प्रोग्राम से सबसे ज्यादा फायदा हुआ, जिन्होंने इससे सबसे ज्यादा लर्न किया, जिन्होंने इसे सबसे ज्यादा लर्निंग को वर्क लाइफ में ट्रांसफर किया. उनके क्या कैरेक्टरिस्टिक्स थे, उनकी क्या वर्क डायनामिक्स थे, वो उनके क्या बैकग्राउंड्स थे, वो कौन सी चीजें हैं जो उनको डिफरेंशिएट करती हैं उन लोगों में से जो इस प्रोग्राम से लर्न करके नहीं जा सके. सो यू वुड लाइक टू कंपेयर देम so that the next time you carry out such training, you identify those people, you are better equipped to identify those people who will benefit most from that training program. Another objective of training evaluation is to gather data to assist in marketing training programs. अभी हमने बात की कि ट्रेनिंग इवैल्यूएशन करने का ये एक बहुत इम्पॉर्टेंट फंक्शन है कि ट्रेनिंग प्रोफेशन का सर्वाइवल इसके अंदर है. तो आपने सेल करना है, आपने मार्केट करना है. सो ऑब्जेक्टिव ट्रेनिंग इवैल्यूएशन का ये है, एक ऑब्जेक्टिव ये भी है कि आपने डेटा कलेक्ट करना है, इंफॉर्मेशन कलेक्ट करनी है, वो इंफॉर्मेशन जो कि आपकी ट्रेनिंग प्रोग्राम के बारे में अच्छी बातें प्रेजेंट करे, जो आपके ट्रेनिंग प्रोग्राम के बारे में को प्रमोट करने में हेल्प करे. तो किस तरह की इंफॉर्मेशन आप गैदर करेंगे? Whether the trainees who attended this training program, were they satisfied with it? Would they recommend that training to another person? And would they use the training content in their work life? And so on and so forth. इस तरह की information आप collect करेंगे. For example, आपने websites पे, brochures में testimonials देखे होंगे. These can be provided by anybody, participants, customers, students. यूनिवर्सिटी की वेबसाइट्स पे स्टूडेंट्स के होते हैं, प्रोडक्ट्स की वेबसाइट पे कस्टमर्स के होते हैं, होटल्स की वेबसाइट पे जिन लोगों ने होटल में स्टे किया होता है उनके होते हैं. सो ट्रेनिंग का अगर आप ब्रोशर देखें किसी का, तो उसमें टेस्टिमोनियल्स प्रीवियस पार्टिसिपेंट्स और ट्रेनीज के होते हैं जिन्होंने ये इन्फॉर्मेशन दी होती है, जिन्होंने ये बताया होता है कि वो कौन सी चीजें हैं जो कि इस ट्रेनिंग के अंदर बहुत अच्छी प्रेजेंट की गई. हाउ वाज दिस ट्रेनिंग बेटर देन अदर्स, व्हाट मेड इट, व्हाट वाज द डिफरेंशिएटिंग फैक्टर in this particular training program. They were really satisfied with it, they were really happy with it, they learned a lot from this training program. So these kind of testimonials are there. So this information is collected after the training, and this is a part of training evaluation, and it is collected so that the training which has been provided once can be marketed for further programs. That is another objective of carrying out training evaluation. Then another objective, which is the economic objective of training evaluation, that is to analyze the costs and benefits of the training program. Costs and benefits in monetary terms, the financial benefits and the financial costs of the training program, because in the end, you do have to see how much you have spent and what is it bringing back to us? What is the dollar value or the currency value of spending this much money on this activity? So you need to see the return on investment, the monetary return on investment. That is another objective of training evaluation. And finally, another objective of training evaluation is to compare the usefulness of training program with other possible alternative human resource strategy. For example, if there is a skill deficiency and you carry out a training program for that to satisfy that deficiency, or alternatively, if there is a skill deficiency in your organization, you can select people from the outside rather than training your own people. So you have to compare that whether training your own people would be useful, would be beneficial, or hiring new people from outside, that would be beneficial. So comparison of these two HR strategies, selection or training. Then you have to compare, another objective of training evaluation is to compare between different training programs for the same purpose, that the training that was received from, let's say, one company A, B, C, and the training that was received from XYZ, how do they compare? किससे ज़्यादा बेहतर फ़ायदा हुआ, कौन सा ज़्यादा कॉस्ट इफेक्टिव था, किसमें ट्रेनीज ज़्यादा सेटिस्फाइड थे, किसमें लर्निंग सबसे ज़्यादा हुई. So you would like to compare, because there would be a number of suppliers of training. There could be in-house suppliers and there could be outside suppliers. So you need to evaluate that which one of them was more effective. That is another objective of conducting training evaluation. So these are the objectives that you need to evaluate in a training evaluation. You need to see the strengths and weaknesses of a training program. You need to see whether the administration and organization was run smoothly. You need to see which trainees benefited most or least from the training program. You need to gather data for marketing your training program. You need to conduct a cost and benefit analysis, and you need to compare the training with other HR strategies or with other training programs. Now, when you have to carry out training evaluation, you need to conduct the evaluation at two different stages. There are two types of evaluations, and these two types of evaluation, they serve two different purposes. The first type is formative evaluation or formative assessment. And the second type is summative assessment or summative evaluation. These are concepts from education, concepts from the field of education. Formative evaluation, that is evaluation that is conducted to see that whether the design and development of the learning activity is suitable and appropriate. Formative evaluation is carried out during the design and development of the training program. Now, हम ये बात कर रहे थे कि evaluation training के बाद की जाती है. ज़हन में ये concept आता है कि evaluation training के बाद होगी. लेकिन evaluation training के दौरान भी होती है और training से पहले भी होती है. अगर आप एक ट्रेनिंग प्रोग्राम डेवलप कर लें, कंटेंट डेवलप कर लें, मटेरियल्स डेवलप कर लें, इंस्ट्रक्टर्स हायर कर लें, और बाद में आपको ये पता लगे कि ये मेथड तो यूजफुल ही नहीं था, ये मेथड इफेक्टिव ही नहीं था, या आपको इंफॉर्मेशन मिलती है, आपको पता लगता है कि ये एक नया तरीका है सिखाने का, दिस इज अ न्यू वे ऑफ लर्निंग. क्लासरूम लर्निंग इफेक्टिव इतनी नहीं है जितनी इंटीग्रेटिव लर्निंग इफेक्टिव है. सो आपने इंटीग्रेटिव लर्निंग इज दैट यू include more activities, you try to include more aspects to the learning process rather than just classroom learning. लेकिन अभी आपने खुद उसको अप्लाई करके नहीं देखा. Formative evaluation will be carried out while you are designing that training, which is using a new strategy of learning. So when you are designing a new training program, formative evaluation is carried out at that time. So what you do in formative evaluation is that you ask experts, subject matter experts, you ask possible attendees, you ask managers, you ask customers what should be included, and then you present to them the way that learning activity is designed and the material and content that is designed for that new way of conducting the training, and you test it on them. Those people will give you advice whether this training content is accurate, whether the method that is useful. So this is an evaluation that is conducted before the training program. One of the ways of carrying out formative evaluation is pilot testing. Pilot testing is a process of previewing the training program with potential trainees and managers or with other customers. So you pilot test a training program, you give a prototype of that training program to people who are similar in characteristics or who have a stake in that training program to evaluate its effectiveness. For example, आपने अगर रिसर्च का कोर्स पढ़ा हो उसमें क्वेश्चनेयर्स की पायलट टेस्टिंग करते हैं. You develop a questionnaire and then you test it on people who are not going to be your actual respondents, but people who have similar characteristics with your respondents. आप ये कहते हैं कि अब ये क्वेश्चनेयर बना लिया है हमने, अब इसको हम 10 लोगों पे पायलट टेस्ट करते हैं. और फिर आप उनसे उनके कमेंट्स लेते हैं, उनके रिस्पॉन्स लेते हैं और देखते हैं कि क्या उनको ये क्वेश्चनेयर फिल करना उनके लिए आसान था, उनको क्या डिफिकल्टीज आई, उनको क्या कंफ्यूजन हुई. So that is pilot testing of a questionnaire. That can be used in training evaluation as well. If you develop a questionnaire to analyze the responses of your attendees, you may need to pilot test that questionnaire. So formative evaluation is evaluation of your training, design, and development. The second type of evaluation is summative evaluation. Summative evaluation determines the extent to which trainees have changed as a result of participating in the training program. जो formative assessment है, that usually includes qualitative data. That includes interviews. That includes question answer sessions. People give you a feeling about what they think about the effectiveness of that training program. They tell you their assessment and they give you this information in the form of expression, in the form of words, in the form of qualitative data. So formative assessment it involves qualitative data. Whereas summative assessment is an assessment which is carried out to see what has been learned, to see how the trainee has changed as a result of this training. So that involves collection of quantitative data. For example, if you are asked to appear in a test or examination after you have attended a training program, you will be given a certain grade or certain numbers or certain marks for that attempt in that examination. So the objective would be to measure how much you have learned when you attempt that examination paper. So summative assessment, that involves most of the time collecting quantitative data. And then if it is about return on investment, that how much benefit has been gained from this training program, then it essentially involves collecting quantitative data or trying to convert qualitative observations into quantitative data. So summative assessment, if you try to differentiate between formative and summative assessment, we can say that summative assessment is assessment or evaluation of learning, whereas formative assessment is assessment for learning. यानी आप formative assessment में इसलिए assessment करते हैं ताकि learning को enhance किया जा सके, learning को improve किया जा सके. आप ये assess करने की कोशिश करते हैं कि ये जो method इस्तेमाल किया जा रहा है, जो content इस्तेमाल किया जा रहा है, जो material, जो तरीका, जो environment इस्तेमाल किया जा रहा है, वो learning को contribute करेगा कि नहीं. So this is assessment for learning. Whereas summative assessment is assessment of learning. यानी learning कितनी हुई है, क्या सीखा है, उसका क्या इफेक्ट हुआ है. So that is the differentiation between summative assessment and formative assessment. And you will design your training evaluation according to this objective, whether you want to conduct an assessment of learning or assessment for learning. So these are the two types of evaluations. Now the evaluation process, it would appear that the evaluation process starts after the previous step, that is the transfer of training that is completed. But that is not the case. The evaluation process starts at the needs assessment step. How that happens? That happens because it starts from stating your learning objectives. If you have not correctly stated your learning objectives, अगर आपने यही नहीं ठीक तरह से स्पेसिफाई किया कि सिखाना क्या है, तो evaluate क्या करेंगे? So it starts at the needs assessment process, that what do you need to teach? What do you need them to learn? So the first step of evaluation process, that is connected or linked to the needs assessment process. You have to conduct a needs assessment to state the learning objectives and analyze the transfer of training, and then you develop outcome measures, after which you choose an evaluation strategy and plan and execute the evaluation. That is the evaluation process. Transfer of training तक तो हम पहुंच चुके हैं, वहां तक की बात हम कर चुके हैं. अब हमने बात करनी है आउटकम मेजर्स डेवलप करने की. उसके लिए हमें यह पता होना चाहिए कि आउटकम मेजर्स क्या क्या हो सकते हैं. What are the outcomes that you can measure and you should measure? Kirkpatrick has developed a framework for classifying the various outcomes that can be measured and that should be measured for training evaluation. It is a 4-level framework. As you can see, that he has categorized training outcomes into 4 categories, into 4 criteria. Number 1 is reactions, number 2 is learning, number 3 is behavior, and number 4 are results. The first level outcome is trainees' satisfaction, reactions, the reaction of the learners, how they have reacted to the training program, which includes their satisfaction, their positive assessment, and their positive perception, or vice versa, dissatisfaction, negative assessment, negative perception about the training program. The second level is learning. Learning means the acquisition of knowledge, skills, attitudes, and behaviors. That is the second level according to Kirkpatrick's framework. That whether learning has taken place, whether they have retained the information, retained the skill that was taught to them. The third level is behavior. According to Kirkpatrick, this means improvement of behavior on the job. So after learning time management skill, after learning leadership skill, whether the behavior of the attendee has changed in the workplace, or if that the learning pertains to a skill, that learning pertains to something doing physically, for example, operating a machine, operating a computer, operating an aircraft, operating any kind of equipment, has that skill been transferred to the work environment? So लर्निंग से अगला जो स्टेप है that is change of behavior according to Kirkpatrick. And the fourth level of this framework is results. That the change in behavior, has it led to any results or benefits to the organization? These are the business results that are achieved through the training program. So these are the 4 classifications that Kirkpatrick has made about the training outcomes. That पहली तो ये कि ट्रेनीज के क्या रिएक्शंस हैं, फिर ये कि लर्निंग हुई है कि नहीं हुई, फिर ये कि लर्निंग से बिहेवियर चेंज हुआ है या नहीं हुआ, और उस बिहेवियर चेंज से रिजल्ट आया या नहीं आया. अपेरेंटली तो ये ठीक लग रहा है, अपेरेंटली ये क्लासिफिकेशन जस्टिफाइड लग रही है. एक तो किर्कपैट्रिक ने ये कहा है कि पहले लेवल की आउटकम अचीव होगी तो अगले लेवल की आउटकम अचीव होगी. नेक्स्ट लेवल विल फॉलो once the previous level has been attained. And the second assumption that Kirkpatrick has made is that the higher level outcome is more beneficial than the lower level outcome. ये assumptions हैं उसके categorization की. Apparently ये classification और ये model या ये framework ठीक लग रहा है. But if you study it in detail, if you look at it in depth, there are certain problems with it. So researchers have criticized this framework on various dimensions. पहली बात तो ये कि research has not found that each level is caused by the level that precedes it in the framework, nor does evidence suggest that the levels differ in importance. तो पहली तो ये बात है कि ये जरूरी नहीं है कि फर्स्ट लेवल आउटकम अचीव हो तो सेकंड लेवल आउटकम अचीव होगी. फॉर एग्जाम्पल एक ट्रेनिंग प्रोग्राम कंडक्ट किया गया जिसमें ये कंपेयर किया गया कि लर्निंग ट्रेडिशनल एनवायरनमेंट में, ट्रेडिशनल क्लासरूम सेटिंग में बेहतर होती है या इंटीग्रेटिव लर्निंग की सेटिंग में बेहतर होती है. तो उन सीरीज ऑफ ट्रेनिंग प्रोग्राम्स में से जो डाटा गैदर किया गया उसे ये पता लगा कि ट्रेनी रिएक्शंस जो हैं वो इंटीग्रेटिव लर्निंग के बाद ज्यादा बेहतर होते हैं, whereas learning, the amount of learning that has taken place, that is more significant in the traditional classroom setting. So ये बात कि पहले satisfaction आएगी, पहले reactions create होंगे तो learning होगी, ये तो negate हो जाती. So ये बात नहीं justify हो सकती कि फर्स्ट लेवल आउटकम अचीव होगी तो सेकंड लेवल आउटकम अचीव होगी या थर्ड लेवल आउटकम अचीव होगी. दूसरा ये कि क्या फर्स्ट लेवल आउटकम इंपॉर्टेंट है या सेकंड लेवल आउटकम इंपॉर्टेंट है, इसका भी कोई एविडेंस अभी तक नहीं मिला. Another criticism on this framework is that the approach does not take into account the purpose of evaluation. इसमें आपको ये कहीं नहीं नजर आया कि evaluation करने का purpose क्या है. So the objective of evaluation is determined first of all, and then the outcome measures are developed. So there is no reference to evaluation in this framework. Then there is another assumption in this framework that outcomes can and should be collected in an orderly manner, that is measures of reaction followed by measures of learning, behavior and results. ये assumption भी इस framework की faulty है कि reactions पहले measure करने चाहिए, reactions measure करने के बाद learning, उसके बाद behaviors और उसके बाद results. रिएक्शंस और लर्निंग एक वक्त में भी मेजर हो सकते हैं. लर्निंग और बिहेवियर एक साथ भी मेजर हो सकते हैं. It depends on what aspect of learning are you measuring. So these were some problems, some weaknesses in the initial Kirkpatrick's framework. Because of that, this framework was revised, and now the framework or the type of outcomes that are classified into various categories, there are 6 categories for that. As you can see, that the categories of outcome or criteria, number 1 are reactions, number 2 learning or cognitive, number 3 behavior and skills, number 4 affective, number 5 results, and number 6 return on investment. According to the previous Kirkpatrick framework, reactions, they pertain to the first level of the initial framework. Learning or cognitive outcomes, they pertain to the second level. Behavior and skills, they pertain to second or third level. Affective outcomes, they again pertain to second or third level. Results, they pertain to the fourth level, and return on investment, that is the fifth level, which was not specified in the initial framework. Now this means that the second level outcomes can pertain to learning or behavior or affective outcomes. Affective outcomes are change of attitudes or motivation. That is another category that is added. Behavior is something that can be measured, that is observable. Behavior is something that you see somebody doing. Whereas affective is something, attitude is something that is inside the mind of the person. So there is a difference between behavior and affect. There may be an attitude for something, but that may not be observable through behavior. So, second level can pertain to learning, to behavior, to affective. But the third level can only pertain to behavior or affective. So, learning or cognitive change in abilities, that is the second level, that does not go into the third level. इस framework पे मुझे एक एतराज़ है. There is a criticism that you will not find in a book. This is for me and you to think. This is a weakness that I have observed in this framework. वो ये कि ये second level of outcome को learning outcome कहते हैं. Second level of outcome को learning outcome कहने का मतलब है कि learning सिर्फ इसी level तक महदूद है. Whereas हमने पिछले कुछ सेशंस में डिस्कस किया था कि learning outcomes can be acquisition of verbal information, it can be change in behavior, it can be change in attitudes. So the effective learning or the change in behavior, isn't that learning as well? मेरा क्रिटिसिज्म ये है कि इस कैटेगरी को कॉग्निटिव एबिलिटीज कहना चाहिए और नॉलेज एक्विजिशन एंड कॉग्निटिव एबिलिटीज कहना चाहिए, क्योंकि लर्निंग तो बाकी सब भी हैं. सो ये आपके और मेरे सोचने की बात है कि ये क्लासिफिकेशन पे क्रिटिसिज्म कैसे हो सकता है. बहरहाल इनके मुताबिक लर्निंग का मतलब ये है, या लर्निंग और कॉग्निटिव कैटेगरी का मतलब ये है दैट अ पर्सन इज एबल to retain the knowledge, skills, abilities that have been taught to him. So how will you measure these various different kinds of outcomes? उसके लिए हमें ये देखना है कि हम क्या measure कर रहे हैं इन outcomes के अंदर. So reactions में आप learner की satisfaction को measure करते हैं. उसकी क्या example हो सकती है? Whether the training room was comfortable, whether the material was useful, was the program content useful? These could be asked. How you can measure? Through surveys and interviews. Learning या cognitive में what needs to be measured? Principles, facts, techniques, procedures or processes the learner has acquired. So you can ask them to state the principles, the electrical principles. You can ask them to state the safety rules. You can ask them to state the steps in interviewing. So they should be able to state or show that they know this information. They know these principles or facts or techniques or procedures. So this can be collected, this information can be collected through tests or work samples. Then behavior or skills that can be measured, that measures technical or motor skills or behaviors acquired by learners, such as preparing a dessert, sawing wood, landing an airplane, listening, that pertains to behavior and skills. This can be measured through tests, observations, self-peer, customer or manager's ratings, or work samples. Then affective outcome that pertains to attitudes or motivations. So example could be tolerance for diversity, attitude about safety, customer service orientation, and this can be measured through attitude surveys, interviews, or focus groups. The fifth category is results, which are measured as payoffs for the company, how the company has gained from the training program. Examples could be how productivity has increased, how quality has improved, how costs have been reduced, how many customers have repeated, customer satisfaction, or reduction in accidents. This can be collected through observation, performance data from records or customer databases. And finally, return on investment, that is identification and comparison of learning benefits with costs. And the example is dollar value of productivity divided by training costs. So the method of measurement is to calculate the economic value of the training program. So this is the revised framework for classifying the training outcomes. In this session, we have discussed training evaluation. What is training evaluation? Why is it carried on? What are the objectives? What are the types? The training evaluation process. And now we have discussed the classification of training outcomes, how training outcomes can be measured in various categories. We will discuss these training outcomes in detail and how they can be measured through various methods in the next session. So, until next time, Allah Hafiz.